Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Nerds of the North podcast. I am host number 1, Matt, and then joining me today, as usual, is host number 2.
This is Nick.
And today we're going to be discussing, again, the newest installment of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier television series, as well as the newest episode of Invincible. And given if we have time at the end, we will definitely be discussing a little bit about this announcement of the live-action Powerpuff Girls TV show, as
which
brought
I'm
to us.
so excited about.
I don't know why you would be. So Nick, why don't you kick us off here with Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Sure. Well, I'll start off with I still think Carly Morgenthau is a terrible character that is just cringe-inducingly bad. But this episode I thought was the strongest of this show so far. And we can kind of go into that because a lot of the themes that have been running through it, I think, got brought to the forefront in this one. So, which made it good. And again, I think the strongest part about the show is its themes, and it did a good job this time with that. Apparently, the show writer Malcolm Spellman, I believe his name is, said this is his favorite episode of the season, or at least the one that he's most proud of, which I can see why.
Oh yeah, no, I think a lot of things kind of came to a head that have been brought up. The most important part of the show, the thing I've been worrying about the most, the boat storyline, seems to have finally come to a close, and
it's not done yet, Matt.
I mean, practically. I mean, good gravy. They fixed the boat up. What else do they have to do?
They have to somehow keep it financed. I don't know.
If I need to go through a whole episode where they do the financing of this, then I'm out. But
yeah, I guess you're right.
But no, yeah, I think this is perhaps a minor gripe, and I had only a few minor gripes with this episode because I want to keep some level of negativity involved in this show. Is that I find it kind of funny that like Sam and Bucky have been out on this like seemingly kind of rogue mission after they broke Zemo out of prison, and like that and all of the however many dozens of people they've killed along the way going on their mission, that wasn't worthy of them being, extradited back to the US to be properly chastised. But Captain America, mind you, his murder was definitely televised more or less, and so I could see why it would be a little bit more serious. But him killing one person was enough to get his ass sent back to the US to be stripped of his title. So, like I said, kind of a minor gripe, but it's plot armor, I think, and it shows a little bit more.
I guess you can make the case so that topic was really explored in the movie Civil War. Just that whole idea of these super powered humans making or doing these crazy things around the world, like trying to save lives, but there's collateral damage, which this show does bring up with Slovakia and Zemo's character. So I mean, there is a little bit of tension there, but I think you could also make the case that I don't really think you've seen Sam and Bucky really. Have they killed anyone so far this show? I don't know if they have. No, the closest maybe when they were on that boat. I don't know. Yeah, Bucky probably killed, he probably killed some people, but that was in Madripoor, which is sort of like a lawless area. Who knows?
Right. And I mean, yeah, I think it's like location and timing that definitely.
But he did break Zemo out of prison, though. I mean, well,
right. Again, like a thing that they can't necessarily prove, but like they know full well, like they're running around with Zemo, and that seems to be pretty well known by means of John Walker. So the fact that they aren't being properly punished for that. Just kind of seems like they turn a blind eye when it's convenient for them. Them being like, I don't know, I guess
Yeah.
whatever shadowy government organization they're working for.
Yeah, I
But
don't mean to get too negative either. There are a few negative things about this episode. I still find a lot of it kind of cringe-inducing, a lot of the scenes, but I thought it worked for the most part this episode. The beginning of this episode with I thought the timeline was kind of weird because I I don't want to get too far off topic here because I do kind of want to discuss the John Walker fight scene, which I thought was pretty epic.
sure.
But after that fight scene, you see like him in front of the Senate getting, ostracized and stripped of his title.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like it seemed like right after the battle, Bucky went off to like go get Zemo.
Right.
But like it was somehow also at the same timeline that John Walker was at the Senate. It just didn't really seem to make sense to me, the timeline at the beginning, which is fine. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like so used to how the actual world works, where it actually seems like it takes the government like months to do anything.
Hmm.
I don't think he would get
Right.
like stripped right away. I think it would take like months of deliberating between like Democrats and Republicans about what it means to be Captain America before
Right. A
anything
trial of sorts,
Yeah.
like anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, like these are like more nitpicky things. I think
Yeah.
some of the other episodes we've discussed and been annoyed by, um, like this episode makes them, uh, you know, kind of fade into the background in terms of
Yeah.
how good the show is.
I do like that Bucky's constantly like, I gotta call in a favor. I gotta call in a favor. One more favor. It's like, okay, so here's the favor I just did for you. I gotta call in a favor.
Right.
I think that
Can
should
I
just
get
be
another
his
favor?
relationship with Wakanda from now on. Like Io says something to him. He's like, I gotta call in a favor. Calling in favors.
And I know, and for a man who seems to have an endless list of enemies, he does have a lot of people who owe him favors, which is, I mean, good for him, I guess. But
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So let's get into the meat of the episode.
mhm.
So what did you think of John Walker's transformation into evil Captain America, essentially?
Well, I'm really glad that there were a lot of things they finally got to in this episode, and John Walker kind of finally breaking, um, certainly was a highlight. That whole fight scene between him and Bucky and Sam was really excellent. Um, you can just see how uh, he's very determined still. He shares that in common with Steve, but he just lacks the self-control that Steve had in terms of his temper, and as well as just kind of being more disciplined, I guess. But yeah, like that whole fight scene and how hollow and broken he felt. And they did a great job of making John Walker still a sympathetic character, because like what he did might not necessarily have been the right thing to do, but his friend had just been murdered
Yeah.
and he was really upset about that.
Well, I think the show also commented on when he's at the Senate, whatever he was at, and he's like,
Mhm.
"You made me. I am Captain America." And you're at that moment, you're like, "Yeah, like he was put into war in this kind of, because the Afghanistan war. I don't know if he was in Afghanistan or Iraq. I think they mentioned Afghanistan, which was a more justified war. But if it was Iraq, I think you could definitely make the case where that war. And I don't want to get into politics here, but that war, a lot of people question if it was
It's
justified or if it
for
was
sure.
just done for like corporate interests, which I know which side I fall on, but I'm not going to talk about that. But yeah, I think there's something there where like this guy suffering from PTSD from a war that didn't necessarily need to be fought. But I do think they said Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
I'm sure
mean,
he's been all over the globe, though. I think he mentioned that as well.
yeah, like regardless of the specificity of it, like we're looking at a guy who was like broadly trained by the US government to be a soldier and to follow orders and to get the job done. And he's done basically all of that to a T, but because the optics of this are bad, they're immediately cutting him loose. And it's really sad to see him, get cast out like that. Like very little mercy was shown in that trial and or that hearing. And whether or not he's necessarily worthy of any mercy could be discussed, but I mean, he did his job. He did what he was told, more or less, and was immediately punished for it. And I think that's what,
Yeah.
I think that more leads to his transformation into, evil Captain America, quote unquote, US agent.
Well, it's like what that character said too, and I'm not going to talk about her quite yet, but she said that the only reason why you are getting, taken from you and publicly punished is because it was caught on camera. Like they
Yeah,
would have been applauding you in private if this hadn't been caught on camera and you had taken out all the flag smasher people.
right.
Which of course that kind of goes along with, the Isaiah Bradley situation, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, I watched a few videos on this, and I think specifically about this fight, and yeah, this whole battle kind of is similar in a lot of ways to the battle that Bucky and Steve had with Iron Man, and they
Mhm.
actually used some of the same music. They brought in some of that the themes of that battle into this battle, which I
Oh,
thought
that's
was,
really cool. I didn't
yeah,
notice that.
pretty sweet.
Mhm.
And at the end of Civil War, if you remember, Steve stands above Iron Man, Tony,
Mhm.
and he has the shield above his head. And for a moment, you thought that he might bring it down and kill Iron Man, but he didn't. He just brought it down on his chest, ending the fight, and then he walked away with
Right.
Bucky, his friend. Um, but in this one, you have John Walker above Sam, and he's about to bring the shield down on Sam's head, and I think it's Bucky
Mhm.
that saves Sam. And
Yep.
then just yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of rhyming with what
Right. Yeah. A
came
lot of
before.
like similar imagery, and
Yeah,
it definitely goes to show that, yeah, like Steve had restraint, and even after that fight, in essentially betraying one friend for another,
hmm,
he admits fully that he's not worthy of the shield and ends up leaving it behind. You know,
yeah. No, like you're right.
and
Yeah, he leaves the shield behind. Yeah, that's good because like John Walker obviously gets his shield stripped from him,
mhm,
and he says, "I am Captain America." Steve leaves the shield behind. He says, "I'm not worthy anymore of this," which is pretty interesting.
right. Steve is always a reluctant, uh, you know, character in that, he wasn't necessarily out to save the world. He was just out to do the right thing. And John Walker he's in it to be Captain America, and he might be out to do the right thing as well, but his motivations, I don't think, are as pure as Steve's
Yeah.
were.
Well, I think
Uh,
also you can look at John Walker too, and he's straight up lying to himself and other people about who actually killed Lamar.
right? Yeah, he's saving face, and he knows full well that he's lying.
Matt, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, I thought you were gone.
those are
It's fine.
no.
I think you were like taking a drink of something and just so
I
used to you
was,
cutting out.
yeah,
Um,
no,
yeah. I guess there's a lot of people too that are like, and I agree with this. They should have just made, and I don't know how they would have done this, but they could have just made John Walker the actual main villain of the show, and I think it would have been stronger.
mhm,
Because again, I think Carly and that whole group of flag smasher a-holes are just so boring compared to every other aspect of the show.
mhm,
Um, and just to call out to someone that that I showed our last podcast to.
mhm.
I told Matt this story, but I accidentally showed her our previous podcast, and she texted me back and she's like, "Man, I really hate the Carly character too." And I said back, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even realize you watched the show." And she's like, "No, I don't. You just are really passionate about
your,
Carly. How
your
could you
hate
not agree with
radiates.
I shouldn't. I just thought that was funny. So shout out to that person. Anyway, yeah, I do think they should have somehow. It's this show's kind of weird because they have like so many different villains. They have the Flag Smashers, they
Mhm,
have John Walker, they had Zemo, and now Sharon Carter is sort of in a weirdly nebulous villain role, but
Right.
which I'm fine with. Like I'm fine with like the gray area of these characters, but I do think there maybe was too many things going on. Um, I don't know. The last thing I was just going to comment on at on the scene was I thought it was the first time I watched it, because I did watch this show twice, this episode
Mhm.
twice. When you see at the end of this battle, like Sam trying to wipe the blood off the shield and like being really emotional about it. At first, I'm like, that's really gross, Sam. Like, cut it out. Yuck, dude. Like, it's yucky. Then the second time I watched it, I'm like, that's actually a pretty interesting image right there of him like trying to wipe the blood off the shield, which is
Right.
essentially what this show is about, you know? So
Yeah, like trying to somehow to clean the legacy of the shield on the spot. It almost seems somewhat desperate that now that now that the shield's in his possession, it's like, oh god. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, that of course that plays into Isaiah Bradley's character too, which we can
mhm.
talk about in a little bit. The next thing I was going to bring up here was Julia Louis-Dreyfus's inclusion, which apparently for some reason she was just talking so quickly. I was having a tough time figuring out what her name was when she said it. Um,
Yes.
but her name, let's see, I'm forgetting. She is from the comics. Her name is. Why is my computer doing this to me? It's probably on the.
Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine.
Yeah, it's probably on the screen right now. Actually, I
Mhm.
bet. Uh, but my computer's acting like a potato. Um, yeah, yeah. No wonder. What a name. Um,
Yeah. No, I had the same problem. I mean, that's that's kind of her MO though. Like, very quick, very witty dialogue. Like, as an actress, that's kind of her style. And and uh and so her trying to get out what is definitely a bit of a mouthful of a name definitely took me, and I was like, wait, what did she say her name was?
yeah, because I hadn't heard of this character before, so it was kind of
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. I don't. So I wasn't like someone like, oh, this is who this person is. So it wasn't like easy for me to figure out what she was, what her name was.
But
Oh, my computer's acting really stupid. Sorry. I was
it's all
hoping
right.
to scroll down a little bit, but um,
But yeah, no, I had definitely tempered my expectations for what this big character reveal was going to be, just based on some of the things I had read and things that we had discussed as far as like what this character would be. Um, and so her inclusion in the show, I think is cool. Like, it wasn't a character I was expecting. My Betty White theory went out the window very quickly.
yeah, unfortunately so, I think.
No, a real missed opportunity, I think, on Marvel's part. But
Yeah,
there's still time.
there's still time. They could still incorporate her, though I think she's like 99 years old now, so.
Yeah, she's got another good 20 years in her.
Oh
But
man.
but yeah, I'll be really excited to see more of what she's going to be doing in the MCU at large. Uh, People are making comparisons to her kind of being like the Nick Fury of the villains of the MCU. So kind of getting the band together, as you had mentioned before we started recording, the Thunderbolts, and
Right.
uh, and I think that could be that's going to be a really cool thing to see the development of this character and who else she ends up talking to in the coming shows, because I'm sure she'll kind of be a common thread in the Marvel shows moving forward, is her kind of showing up at one point being like, hey, here's my card, I'll talk to you later, and then bouncing. So
Honestly, my first thought when she showed up on screen, number
mhm,
one, I laughed because
yeah.
I'm like, again, I'm like, this is the cameo character. Again, I got so hyped up for it. I'm like, oh wow, well, that's a little disappointing. But when I first saw her, I'm like, is this the character from Veep? I don't know if you've seen that show on HBO.
Oh yeah.
Like I
I mean, the
didn't.
setting is right for
Yeah,
that.
that's what I thought. I'm like, oh man. I don't really like her character in that show, so I'm like, I'm okay if she's not here right now. Well, whatever. It was fine. I didn't. I hate like the weird little blue streak in her hair too. It just
Mhm.
seems weirdly like almost too. I don't know. I can't explain it. I just don't like when shows do that. Oh, like you can see it a little bit right here on my screen. See, like you can see the little blue thing in her hair.
Yeah, your screen is not moving for me.
Oh, can you see? You can see her face though, right? Oh, my
Uh,
bad. Oh, sorry. This I'm on. For some
different
reason,
screen.
Gmail is. I'm on my. I have two open right now. Never mind. I'm looking at Firefox, but I have Gmail as my screen share. But for some reason, it's not working. Anyway, yeah. So she has like a little blue streak in her hair. I don't know. It's not a big deal. Sorry, didn't mean to get sidetracked there. Anyway, yeah. Apparently in the comic, she plays Madam. Her name is Madam Hydra too. So she has a pretty
A strong connection, right?
She's a she is a Russian double agent, a former agent of Shield, a vet of the assault team Fem Force.
Hmm? Fem Force.
I don't
Oh
think we
dear.
get away with that one today. And at one
No.
point, by the name of Madam Hydra. She was also a love interest of Nick Fury's at one point.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
and of course, it's somebody said it's possible she could be grooming Walker for work with Fury on Disney Plus's upcoming Secret Invasion. I don't know the backstory behind that. I'm sure the article goes into it more, but.
mhm. But yeah, I think it was a cool way to introduce her, just like a real brief glimpse of
Yeah.
what her goings on are going to be.
And you mentioned
And
before too that she originally was supposed to be introduced in Black Widow.
right, yeah, and I think this is just internet discussion of me reading about on Reddit after having watched the episode, of course. But yeah, apparently, yeah, there was some discussion that yeah, she was supposed to show up in the Black Widow movie first, and then once we saw her there, um, this was supposed to be more of like another reveal of oh, she kind of jumped ship from movie to show type of thing. So
Yeah.
um, given that this is our first glimpse at her, I have no knowledge of this character outside of most of what we've been talking about and kind of
Yeah.
what I've read. So I'm excited to see more of her. I think
Some
that with the loss of Black Widow in the MCU, we do need our espionage end of things to kind of be covered again.
yeah, I mean I think there's speculation that she recruits Florence Pugh, I think that's how you say her last name. Florence Pugh's Black Widow into the Thunderbolts potentially.
Mhm. Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no. I think it'll be cool to see what they do with her moving forward. But outside of that, I know that I'm just curious.
Very curious. I'm gonna try
Curious.
shutting down my let's leave it. I was gonna try shutting down my Google Chrome and reopening it, but it's fine. The next thing I have on the list that we can kind of go into is what did you think of the Isaiah Bradley scene?
I think, I mean, I was glad they finally addressed the elephant in the room because it's been on the tip of everyone's tongues the whole time in the show. And this was something that I kind of brought up in an older episode, but that uh, the fact that, the show at large is about there being a black Captain America and how, like, I don't think Steve really thought through how complicated that was going to be, and Bucky kind of brings that up later in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's a complicated topic, especially with with real world issues going on, and then coupling into that, you have like with Isaiah, he was essentially Black Captain America before it was cool, and like he was cast aside by the government like in a huge way and mistreated horribly. And so, Sam finds himself in this awkward position of now having the power to take on this mantle and wondering whether or not that's the right thing to do. And it definitely is a very complicated topic. And I think my own prediction of Sam not becoming Captain America in the run of this show is going to be I'm going to be eating my own shoe here
I
next
told you.
episode.
I told you.
But I don't know. I could still be right. They could really leave us hanging, but I think that would be a bad move on their part at this point because
It would
what's in
have
the
always been.
box, man? What's in
It
the
would.
box?
It would have been always. Yeah, I mean, we all know it's in that box.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the scene was pretty powerful. They were taking a major risk by including it. And part of me at first I was kind of like, oh man, maybe they shouldn't be bringing up Isaiah Bradley's, like what happened to him in a way, like,
Mhm.
because I'm like, the country already has like a lot of tension. Why invent something else to make people even more upset? But the more I thought about it, I thought it was okay because obviously the Marvel universe,
Mhm.
this was something straight out of the Marvel universe, and also a lot of the experimentation that went on Black Men, back then, like it's not
Mhm.
that it didn't happen,
Right.
so. And I one thing I also like too, in a way, I wish they would have explored this more because obviously, Sam wrestles with what Isaiah Bradley, like his opinion on everything that happened, and he agrees, but also he doesn't. Like he thinks that a black man can be Captain America and should be Captain America.
Mhm.
And I do kind of wish this show would have gone into why that is, like why Sam has a different opinion than Isaiah does, because he does, and I just kind of wish they explored that a little more. And I guess to me, I've kind of been complaining about that all along, that I think Sam doesn't have much agency. We don't really know why he does what he does.
Mhm.
So I kind of wish they would have explored that a bit. And in a way, maybe what he does is, and they've kind of maybe touched on this a little bit, is that he honestly likes helping people because he was like a counselor to soldiers and stuff. But I just wish they kind of would explore, like, why is he passionate enough to become Captain America? Like,
Mhm.
what is it that's driving him to want to like represent a country like America? Does he love America, or does he not love America?
Yeah, I think a parallel that's being made in my mind. It's a drastically different property outside of film entirely, but I don't know how familiar you are with Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
The show with Andy Samberg.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched a few episodes, but yeah, I'm not an expert.
Yeah, no, there's an episode because in regards to like Sam and his race and the mantle of Captain America, whether or not he wanted to take that on as a black man and what that would mean, Isaiah's take on that is that like why on earth would you want to wear these stars and stripes in support of these people who did these horrible things to not only to him but um to his race at large. And it's I think in Brooklyn Nine-Nine they approach this subject with without getting into like a ton of the details. um the head of the unit there with the Brooklyn Nine-Nine unit and one of the captains is one of them is essentially arrested just for being black in a neighborhood. Like that's essentially what happens. He's off duty and is approached by a police officer and apprehended for just going on a walk in his neighborhood. And his commanding officer essentially tells him like he worked his whole life to get to where he was and had to just push down a lot of this bullshit that he dealt with to get to where he was. And his advice is to just drop it. Like don't don't put in a complaint about this officer, don't do anything. It's only going to cause more headaches for you than it is going to help. And his response to that is bullshit, and so he ends up pushing forward with dealing with this other officer and dealing with the problem. And I think I see a lot of a lot of parallels to that in this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in that Sam's like, Isaiah and everything he went through and everything that his race has gone through in this country, it would be to turn away from an opportunity that could make things better and to provide better representation, um like to do this rather than to not. And but like that was just a huge parallel that popped up in my mind. Like to turn
Yeah.
away from this responsibility would be to like take all of the sacrifice and everything that's been done, um and to render it useless. So I think ultimately he's making the right decision here. But yeah, it's a really cool thing for them to actually approach that topic in the show, because clearly it's a very important and charged topic to talk about.
Have you ever seen HBO's Watchmen?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I mean that show talks about race and superheroes. Like that's what the whole show's about basically. And
Basically,
I need to do a rewatch, but that this show's kind of reminding this episode specifically is kind of reminding me of that show.
no, 100%.
Yeah, but that show's really excellent. If anyone hasn't watched it, definitely you should watch it.
Yeah, I think that's another really good comparison.
Yeah,
And I'm glad they finally addressed that elephant in the room, because they like kept brushing up against it the whole show, but never really just going out and saying,
yeah.
like,
I was actually almost kind of surprised how far they went into it,
mm-hmm,
because this is obviously a Marvel show, which is it's made for as many people as they possibly can make it for. It's not like super uh what's the right word? It's not like a cult show. Everyone's watching this. Like
oh
you
yeah,
and your mother are watching this. Like everyone watches this show.
for sure, yeah,
So yeah, they didn't really hold back. They went all in. With that Isaiah Washington or sorry Washington Isaiah Bradley scene.
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
No,
keep on wanting to say Isaiah Washington, and I think Isaiah Washington's an actor.
no,
I don't know why, but yeah, Isaiah Bradley. Sorry.
yeah, no. I agree. I'm really glad that they went in as hard on this topic as they did, and there's obviously so much more nuance that they could have gone into, but they have limited time with the run of the show. So
I think they touched on it as much as I would want them to. Like they could do
mhm.
like a flashback, which I think would be kind of cool, but in context with the show, I don't know if it would make sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I think they have plenty of loose threads that they need to close up at this point now,
yeah.
and to do so in a way that doesn't, that that isn't either confusing or deemed stupid. Because
So I
I'm,
wouldn't be opposed to an Isaiah Washington, sorry, Isaiah Bradley show. Like I think it would
yeah,
be like pretty cool, but they would have to be. This show got really political. I think that show would be even way more political. I might be too hot button for them, but
oh no, I agree. I think
um,
that could be a thing down the line, possibly. But for
yeah.
now, I think Marvel's probably
Because in my mind, I'm picturing sort of like just this crazy pulpy show with, like a Captain America just running through in like Korea, and I don't know. I think it could be pretty sweet.
mhm.
But um, uh, so I was gonna move on to the scene of Bucky and Sam working on the boat. I
Mhm.
actually really like these scenes a lot, which is kind of weird because you wouldn't think I would, because I wasn't looking forward to getting back to the boat. But I love the music that they have in these scenes. It's just like so out of the 80s. He's like flirting with his sister. Bucky's flirting with Sam's sister, which I thought was
Right.
really amusing. And that actually the funniest line in the whole show I thought was, at least so far as of episode 5, was like when Bucky, like he takes the wrench and like fixes whatever leaky pipe that was, and he's like, why don't you just use your arm? And he's like, oh, I'm right-handed. I forget about it sometimes.
Yeah, right.
I think the actor's line delivery was really funny in that scene. I don't know. Yeah, I really just like the weird 80s buddy movie vibe. I just thought it was kind of awesome. And
Right.
and like the second time I watched it, I kind of just realized too, like at the beginning of the show, these two characters hate each other for some reason.
Mhm.
But in these scenes with Sam and Bucky, they really do seem to become really good friends. And they even talk about, whether they're partners or not. So I thought
Right.
it was kind of cute.
I thought it was a really good scene too. I will say that this was one of my other minor gripes um, with the episode, and again, I'll iterate that I liked this scene and I like how they did everything. I do find it kind of funny though that like putting the two like super masculine characters into a room and asking them to talk about their feelings, like that was a no-go for them. But having them get all dirty and oily working on a boat engine and talking about their feelings, that was totally kosher. Like, so like I think that was like my only gripe really, was that they had to put them into a situation where They were like, "Oh yeah, pass me that wrench. Hey, by the way, you're my friend." Like,
That's how it should be, though, bro. That's how men do.
right? Yeah, like I thought it was a little silly in that regard, but other than that, yeah, like I thought the music was great. It added some levity to a series that like I think in the last couple of episodes has definitely been
Yeah.
going down this dark slope
I think
of
this episode improved 100% just based off Carly's lack of being in it.
you see your hate is showing again, Nick. No, I think I really don't know what they're gonna do with Carly Morgenthau that'll make her
There's
um
nothing they could do.
like I want to believe that there's something that they can do to make her maybe more relatable or interesting. I don't know,
I
but
was listening to someone and they said that some of her story was affected by by COVID's impact,
mhm.
and that Mama Yaga or whatever,
Oh yeah, the woman that had the
Mama Danya, I think. Apparently,
mhm.
she actually had an arc in the show at some point,
Oh, that
but
just
it was
like
a
got cut out.
or something because of COVID. I don't know, but it was
And that could
stupid.
be true, but that still only like would maybe make her a little more sympathetic as a character.
Yeah, I just don't see them being able to do anything that would actually make me be sympathetic to Carly.
Yeah, like at this point, because I don't know, I'm really tired of it's a trope at this point of like the a an otherwise well-intentioned character is, the phrase "the ends justify the means," the character. Like
Yeah, you're right.
um
That is who she is.
yeah, and like I get really tired of that when it gets used so often, and it always gets used in these versions of things where uh, like I feel like Carly Morgenthau is like a better uh like version at this point of like an evil Captain America than like John Walker is. Because like she's very like very patriotic in this regard in like trying to represent her people. It just happens to be that it's a
She
different group of people than Americans.
Well, I
And
think she represents the world, is what she would say. Hence their weird little globe in a hand
right, yeah, their little logo.
insignia or whatever. The
And but yeah, like I just think that
I think she was a good idea that just was not executed very well,
yeah, like
personally.
yeah, I think just her being totally okay with just like murdering people, like and then they're like, well, but I'm the good guy here, like they're the bad guys. It's like this is a
Yeah, there's
load of
just
barnacles. Like
chocolate. Yeah, I mean, I think like it's kind of obvious what they're trying to do, but it's almost like too transparent and like it's just I don't feel any threat from her. Like I just don't I'm not worried about anything when she's around, you
no,
know. It's just
yeah,
she's not a very good villain. Like John Walker is a pretty good villain in that regard. I mean, I'm still not worried what he's going to do necessarily, but cuz I know no one's going to die like that I care about, but um
mhm.
he is unpredictable like especially now, so
Yeah, I think ultimately the show will end in a satisfying way, but how satisfying I find the wrap up of Carly's storyline is not really gonna factor into how I feel about the show too much. I think
uh
things with
she
Sam and
she
Bucky
was a net
and
negative on the show. She will factor into what I think about it. In fact, she'll factor in big time into what
I mean, I
what I
will
think.
say I'm a little bummed out that Zemo is not going to be
I'm not convinced that he won't. I'm sure they won't introduce him for him just to go away. But there's like,
Oh, I mean, I'm meaning more just for the rest of this show. I think
oh,
he's benched for now, which I think is a bit of a bummer. But
there's rumors that he might be a member of the Thunderbolts as well.
he would be a great. I mean, he'd be a really good member of the Thunderbolts. I think that would work perfectly.
Yeah.
But
What do you think of Sam and Bucky's scene? You know, where they're throwing the shield around outside Sam's sister's house.
I mean, I'm always a big fan of a training montage.
I know.
Like,
Oh my god. I was it just me or was it really obvious that that was a stunt double for a lot of that?
I mean, I don't think it was really obvious. Like,
When he's like, especially when he's doing the flips and stuff, I'm
oh
like,
yeah,
that is obviously that doesn't even have the same face.
right.
It's like, oh, the guy didn't like he didn't have the same like build as Anthony Mackie either.
hmm
I don't know. I just it just took me out of it for a moment.
I mean, I find it really funny that because you can very clearly see the face of Anthony Mackie's stunt double in, I think it's that first episode when it's the first or second episode when they're on top of the truck
Second, yeah.
fighting. Like, if you pause it just right, like the editing did not do this fight scene any justice in trying to hide that it was not Anthony Mackie. Because if you pause it just right, as it's like he's just standing there in the Falcon costume, and it's like, hold the phone. But that being said, I think it was fine. I think they should have had the scenes swapped. Like, we should have gotten a training montage, and then we should have gotten Bucky leaving, and them talking,
Yeah.
because
Well, I mean, the timeline on the show is kind of weirdly fuzzy because,
mhm,
like, Sam implies that he knows Carly's going to New York, and
mhm.
then but he's like, "Yeah, I'll contact you, Bucky, when I know more," or something. I can't remember the exactly, but it's not really clear how long he spends training. It could be like a week. It could be like several months.
Yeah, and I wish they, I don't know, because the montage I don't think does a very good job of like showing how the time flow is, because how long would it really take for him to like master using the shield? Like,
Well, I
so
kept
much.
worrying that that shield's like going to come back and hit the house.
Right, I know. I had that same thought.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you forget the boat, you're
Yeah.
gonna break your sister's damn house
Well, I
with
was
this
like worried like
goddamn
that one of the
shield.
kids was going to be standing there, just like decapitate
Just-
them or something.
Oh god. But yeah, I mean, I think it was fine. Like, the conversation that Bucky and Sam have or has is really good.
Yeah.
And
I
like, it
like
was finally the moment that I watched this show for. Like, I wanted a bromance where these two come together and finally talk about their feelings. And I was robbed of that for so long
I
until
like
this scene.
I like when Bucky just straight up apologized for not understanding
Right.
um what it what it really what it really like meant when or what it meant to Sam when he was given that shield. I also
Mhm.
liked when Bucky said that the shield was the closest thing he had to a family, which was kind of sad.
Right. Yeah. No, totally. I felt very sad for him in that moment, because it's like he hasn't been that close to anyone, since Steve's been gone. And it's like the only thing he has to really remember Steve by is that shield. I think
Yeah.
it does a good job of showing why he's been so upset by how Sam handled things with the shield and all that.
And they also confirmed that that is indeed Steve's book that he's holding on to,
Hmm
which I thought was nice. Also, I like that Sam told Bucky that it didn't matter what Steve thinks in, anymore. He had to figure out who he is on his
Right.
own.
Yeah, I think Anthony Mackie's performance in this, I think, redeemed him in my mind,
Bless you.
for some of the. Bless you. That was my wife, for anyone wondering. And don't be sorry, you're fine. But yeah, like, um, I'm still really annoyed by the cell phone scene in the club. For God's sakes, that bothered the fuck out of me. Um, but yeah, like, I think this episode definitely did a really good job of, yeah, like, actually giving Sam a voice and showing that he's making decisions uh, of his own outside of the influence of Steve and Isaiah and even Bucky. Like, he's doing this on his own terms, and I like that. So
I mean, I think
I
a lot of the reasons probably why those earlier episodes were sort of awkward was because they were setting up this episode in a lot of ways.
right.
But I don't like. I did like his performance more this episode, but I'm not quite 100%. I don't think he's quite 100% redeemed in my eyes, though.
Hmm.
It went a long way to redeeming Anthony Mackie's performance. But
Hmm.
there's still a few scenes where I'm like, I look at him and he's just kind of like looking like really intensely. Like I, I still don't get it. um, I do think this scene set up uh Bucky having to explain to Yori what happened with his son,
Hmm.
which I'm almost sort of dreading watching that scene. Like,
Yeah, because I don't see a version of that conversation. Because what is Bucky gonna do? Is he gonna
well,
walk up to this guy and be like, "Well, hey, um, so I have an alternate personality that I previously wasn't able to control, and that guy, yeah, he's the one who murdered your son, not me."
well, the
Like,
thing is though, like, yeah, it's there. He knows he's not going to be friends with this guy anymore, most likely, which I think will hurt him.
mhm,
But at the same time, he can at least give him closure on knowing what happened to his son. Like he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I killed him, but I didn't do it with any malice,
right,
and I apologize for what happened. And
and
I was literally programmed by the Nazis to do this. So you
mhm,
can, it's almost like kind of like reminiscent of the weird scene that John Walker had with Lamar's parents this episode.
right,
Um, Actually, that's really good because, John Walker straight up lied and
mhm.
didn't give the parents closure in that way. You know, I didn't make that connection until now that
Well,
that
we
scene
gave
is
them a
almost,
false sense of closure that
yeah.
that the person that was, and not that that will really like burden them any further. I don't know what's going to happen with Carly. Um,
Well, did you notice that Lamar's sister looked kind of skeptical in that moment?
she
I
looked
was
kind of
kind of,
skeptical, and I don't know, maybe more. I was almost thinking she kind of looked a little afraid of John, because I mean, like there is just video footage of him rage murdering someone on camera,
yeah,
like, and I wouldn't necessarily be ecstatic if he were in my living room at that point. Like,
yeah, that's true.
but yeah, I agree. I think there's maybe they'll do something with that scene. I don't know, like with the sister looking kind of skeptical or scared, like.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were setting something up for this episode actually, so
Mhm.
I was just kind of noticed it. I don't know if it was intentional or not.
But yeah, I think the big things that need to wrap up now are uh, Bucky and his conversation with his buddy, um, that he killed his son. Uh, Sharon Carter, whatever the heck's
Yeah,
going to go on there. What's going
that
on with
was
her?
the last point I had actually was whether you think she's the power broker or what, because she obviously hired but I think his name's Batroc the Leaper or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, to do something from in the first episode, he was trying to capture that soldier. I don't think we knew why. Maybe we
Hmm.
did. But then she hired him again to assist Carly, I think, in whatever she's trying to do at the UN.
Yeah, I think I've
Honestly, I kind
based
of
on
zoned out. I zone out some of these scenes because it's like, oh, okay, bad guys doing bad things. Well, I'll
right.
find out what's going on later.
I think based on some of the things I've read online, and again, like I'm mostly pulling from Reddit, but um, the thought is that Sharon isn't necessarily going to be the power broker, but uh, the opinion that I kind of liked was that she works for the power broker, and the power broker is some like shady U.S. government official. And I actually heard some people thinking that it was shoot, what's his face? The general that they've all had a lot of contact with over the course of the MCU.
Like,
Ross, I
yeah,
believe.
General Ross,
Yeah,
who's
Thunderbolt Ross, right?
Thunderbolt Ross, who is the father of the Hulk's love interest. I'm drawing a blank on her name right now. Betty Ross. Betty Ross.
Yes.
Yeah.
And which I kind of like that idea, because for Sharon to be the power broker, I don't think fits very well with her character and who she's been in the whole MCU. But for her to work for the power broker totally fits into her MO.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I'm kind of resistant to that theory too, just because Sharon Carter, from what I understand, is a good character from the Marvel comics. So I just don't see them totally transforming her into a villain for like their cinematic universe. I just didn't see that happening.
I kind of imagine more of she hired that guy as more of a front for some greater purpose.
Yeah, like she's playing some sort of 4D chess is how I heard it described.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I think that'll be more of the route they go. Maybe he'll be the loose thread that they're able to track to like find out what Carly's up to or what her plan is, and that's how they're able to
I do
track
think
them down.
Sharon somehow is involved in this thing, and it's probably going to be she's going to be our exposition machine into knowing what that is.
Right. Which I'm pretty all right with. Like, I think Sharon's been a cool addition to the show, even though she's only really been in it a little bit. She's a total badass, and getting to see her do more will be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, just for those that care, who's going to be Bucky's long-term love interest?
Clearly Sarah. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I was thinking that too, because I know people think about this stuff. Because I know that's how I know when I talk to my mom about these things. I'm like, she's like, oh, like, who do you think blank and blank likes? And I'm like, I don't know. It's
right.
like, I know that's what some people think about when they watch this kind of stuff, and that's how they get engaged with it.
Sure.
You know, and like, I mean, I'm heterosexual, but I can recognize that Sebastian Stan's a good-looking dude. So,
I mean, I'd let him. I'm straight, but I'd let him lead me if we were dancing. Like,
you let him what?
Lead me?
Oh, lead you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No. Overall, though, what are your thoughts on this episode overall? And do you have any predictions on what's going to happen in the next episode?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think I said this before, but this is definitely the strongest episode of this show so far to me. From the people I've listened to, that most everyone agrees with that, and I think it would be kind of hard pressed not to agree with that. As far as prediction wise, I don't really have any predictions. I think it's obvious some things are going to happen. There's going to be a final confrontation between Bucky, Sam, and Carly Morgenthau and her gang of idiots, and then obviously that scene at the end. There was a hidden scene at the end where John Walker is preparing his own shield, and he's going to go to New York as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's obviously going to be some sort of final confrontation, and Sharon Carter has to show up obviously in some way. And it looks like Zemo's out of the picture for now. Who knows? Maybe he could show up again.
Sure.
Kind of looks like he won't though. And I think Sam is obviously going to show up in the outfit he got from the Wakandans via Bucky. I don't know if he'll still have his wings or not. I'll be kind of curious about that. I don't think he will, because I think he gave the wings basically to Hakeem. I don't know if he'll show up again. Maybe he will in the wings.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm trying to decide if the intention there was to make us think that he received a new set of wings from the Wakandans, or if this is just his new uniform as Captain America.
Yeah, the second time I watched it, I was under the assumption that because they were tracking Sam's location through the wings, because John Walker said that was American property, American government. So I thought, he took the shield and they didn't know where it was. So I thought maybe he did that because he didn't want to be tracked by the government.
Oh, sure.
But I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I'm curious as well. Like, I think it would be kind of cool to combine like because I mean he's so used to using the wings and in combat, and for him to have the shield in addition to the wings would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in a way too, it's kind of, he doesn't have any superpowers without the wings. He's just a guy with a shield, so
yeah, and I don't know. I think we kind of got a taste of how, like, I don't know, loose and ineffectual hero can be like that through John Walker. Like,
yeah.
he had the shield, he had the uniform, and he had the, backing of the US government at the time. And in his first fight with an even like moderately powerful foe in the form of the Wakandans, he gets his ass kicked. And that's the end of that. So I'm
Yeah.
I don't know if without his wings how formidable he'd be, um, or if in some way they're going to try and introduce maybe Sam getting super soldier serum. Who knows? But after everything that happened with Isaiah and with John Walker, I don't really know if that'll be the case either. I just don't know. Like,
Yeah. No, it's kind of weird to think about because, and one thing I've noticed in the show, like I just feel since Sam doesn't have any superpowers besides his wings, I constantly think he's like the weakest guy in the room.
mhm.
If there's like a group of superpowered people, he just doesn't seem that strong.
No, absolutely.
Like I
And I
can't see
think
him taking on uh Thanos at the end of Infinity War if he doesn't have any like super strength.
right, and that ends up being kind of like a barrier to entry on like what villains he can have too,
Yeah.
like because like even Carly Morgenthau would overpower him pretty easily, honestly. Like if she wanted to, she could just kick his ass. And so if that's already too much, then like who can you have as your villain? Like Zemo could be his villain, sure, and it could be more of a battle of the wits type thing. But Captain America isn't exactly known for being the wittiest of heroes, and they could do it through
Yeah.
that
He's not
lens.
Batman. He's not like the world's greatest detective. He's just kind of,
Yeah, right.
he's just
I
a good
mean,
guy. I mean, that's what he's
right,
like, he does the right thing.
and and does that make for a strong, morally backed character? Sure. Does it make for an interesting thing to watch or read about? Not really. So I don't know how they're going to tackle that in the future. But yeah, no, I'll be excited to see how the show ends. Yeah, kind of like you said, I don't really have a ton of predictions. Um, my theory might still be right. They might not necessarily introduce him as Captain America yet,
You're
but
really dead set on that. I don't.
I
They set it up at the end of this episode. He will be Captain America. There's
I
no way
know.
that he's not going to be.
I mean, yeah, the only I would really think it would be a bad move on their part at this point to not do that. But it seems like
They should start
based
next
on
episode with him giving the shield to someone else.
oh god, I would be so upset. But yeah, with that, I suppose we can move on to our next topic then, which would be the latest episode of Invincible through Amazon. So, have you seen the episode, Nick?
Yeah, I watched it yesterday.
Yeah, and so what were your opinions?
Well, like all of this show, I like it, but I don't have a ton to comment on just because it's oddly enough, this show has been less plot driven and more character driven,
Mm-hmm.
which
Sure.
I think the main ongoing arc so far, not that there's not littler arcs throughout it, is that uh, Mark has a relationship with Amber that he's not being forthright with. He
Right.
can't tell her everything, which I know this probably they go into more in the comics why he can't. I'm not entirely sure why he can't tell her his secret identity,
Mm-hmm.
but this episode it kind of got brought to the forefront a bit more. Like it seems like she's finally had enough of him, but at the same time, I am kind of growing a little tired of this plot line just because it seems to be happening every episode.
Right.
Um, which is fine, but it's just like there's not that much happening really. And then the other main storyline is with Omni-Man and Mark's mother,
Yeah.
which I can't remember her name right now, which isn't probably great.
Debbie.
Debbie, like she's suspicious of him, but nothing's really happening. Like nothing's really coming of it. I did like Omni-Man's rooftop conversation with his tailor, who, if you didn't know, is voiced by Mark Hamill, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't. The college storyline I thought was kind of interesting with like Justin Roiland was in it. I think he voiced two characters in it actually.
Yeah, he voiced the drunk frat boy.
Yeah, and I think he voiced the other kid who was digging up the grave of like the immortal guy.
Oh, sure.
I wasn't sure. He sounded like him though.
But yeah, it's very interesting seeing the different ways that they tackle some of these storylines. So for example, like the main plot thread of like Omni-Man and all that, and the Guardians and Debbie, like Debbie in the comics has very little to do with that entire storyline, like at all. She's not investigating, she's not questioning. By the time we're this far in the storyline with Mark going to college, like that entire storyline has been put to bed. Like Omni-Man's gone, and in Mark's mother Debbie she's basically becoming an alcoholic in the comic. Like all she does is drink to forget about her life with Nolan. And so I'm actually a big fan of how they're tackling it with the show and giving her more of a voice and more of an interesting plot in the show.
I think for me, like I do like the show. It had an extremely strong first episode, but it's so obvious they're saving like the big events for the finale, which I think is 2 weeks from now.
Right.
That it's almost like they're spinning their wheels through the entire show until they get from first to last episode. Not that it's not entertaining, but it's just not much is happening.
Well, yeah, like this, like with the zombie robot men, in this newest episode, with I believe D.A. Sinclair is his name. Like that whole storyline gets introduced way earlier in the comics and still has not been concluded by the time I get to where I am in the comic. And I am way, way further down the road than the show is at this juncture.
Interesting.
And like that story's introduced, but it is not finalized at all. And they introduce and finalize that whole story arc like in one go. So that makes me think that ultimately it doesn't end up being that big of a deal, or they just didn't want to include it more in the show.
Yeah, it kind of seems like when like Game of Thrones, when people like were speculating stuff in the books, but then the show would like resolve it like some like banal answer, and then people like, oh, does that mean like it's not a big deal in the books?
Yeah, and honestly, it's very surprising what they do, because like they keep bringing up the demon detective named like Damien Darkblood in the show, and like his purpose ends up just being completely removed from the comic, like in the most lackadaisical way possible. And it's like, oh yeah, we figured that out already, go home. And like that's all they do with him. Like which is such a bummer, because he's a cool character, and I think there's more that's going to go on with him in the show, which makes me think maybe there'll be more that they do in the comic too. I don't know, but
I know I've seen interviews of Robert Kirkman where he basically said that he's matured a lot as a storyteller since he wrote this Invincible, and a lot of the decisions they're making for the show are stuff that he wished he could have done for the original run of Invincible. Now that he knows more about telling stories, because he's the guy behind Walking Dead too.
Oh, sure, okay.
Yeah.
No, I definitely would agree with him on that. I think the way that the story isn't bad in the comics, but I do think that there's a lot of characters that get introduced that aren't necessarily very important to the story, and their storylines just kind of end, seemingly with no reason, no rhyme or reason at all. And the fact that like the wife of the most powerful man on earth is like kind of relegated to being a real estate agent, and that's like the most interesting thing they did with her, I think is kind of a disservice to like what they could have done and what I think they are doing with her much better in the show version of this. So but yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah. Like I said, I feel like they set up a mystery in the first episode, and I kind of wish they. I don't know. I just kind of wish they would have somehow incorporated that mystery into it to like kind of like slowly reveal the details and build up the intrigue. But I don't really
yeah,
think they're doing that. I think they already kind of gave away what was going on too, and I don't know why they're being so cagey with what's happening. You
yeah,
know?
I don't know either, like, because I would agree, they in the episode where Damien Darkblood gets banished to hell or whatever by Cecil, um like he essentially is like, I know that Nolan did it, but I need to prove it, and not only do I need to prove it, I need to find a way to like deal with him. And for that to get stretched out from the first episode to now is kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
Like I wish that we had uh, maybe a few more breadcrumbs thrown our way along the way, or maybe have that reveal be done mid-season and have other storylines get brought up, because there's plenty of comic. There's so much comic to go off of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I think they set up like a story arc they wanted to get through this season, but I just don't know if. And I'm not a story creator. Like I want to be. Well, I am a story creator in my own way. I am trying to write a book here, but
Mhm.
like I want to support their vision, but at the same time, as an audience member, I can only kind of relay what my opinion is at this point. But I know they probably came to this. This is stupid, but I'm on their side. I'm even on the Falcon the Winter Soldier side. I it takes a lot of work to make these things, but again, I'm an audience member. I'm spitballing.
Right. And there's only so much we can glean before the finale comes. I
Yeah.
just know that there are things about the Invincible comic that I prefer, and then things about the Invincible show that I prefer, and that I think reading them both, or reading the comic while I'm watching the show, is definitely enhancing my understanding and the overall experience. Um, but if you were to forego the comic for just the show, I think that is actually a really great way to experience this story as well.
Hmm. Yeah. In a way, that's kind of sad too, because I know the comic people really loved it, but
Hmm.
I feel like once the show comes out, it's almost going to kind of supplant the the comic in people's minds. Which I know there's still people out there that'll read it anyway, but I almost think like the show is probably going to become the definitive version of the events. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's only because, yeah, like I said, some of or I guess I said this to you before we started recording, some of like the humor and jokes and just overall stuff in the beginning of the comic series is a little dated, maybe a little taboo by today's standards. Um, and so I think the show is going to age a lot better at this point than the comic. And like I don't know, something that always stands out to me every time I watch the show is that they make Nolan like a really good dad in the comics. Like he's a loving and caring father, and a good husband to Debbie, and he's kind of an asshole in the show, like 100% of the time it seems. Like,
Yeah. No, I think they did a really good job in the first episode of making him seem like a really good guy. But since then, he does seem more like a jerk.
Hmm.
I mean, there's still
Yeah.
moments where there's like levity between him and Mark.
Hmm.
Um, like a scene that comes to mind is when Mark is going up to talk with Amber, and like he's like giving him advice, and he has like some piece of a squid on his back or something.
Right.
But yeah, they did a really good job the first episode. Even I remember the first episode when he punches Mark a little bit too hard.
Right.
It was kind of foreshadowing things to come, and I think they did a good job overall. And they did a really good job that first episode.
But yeah, since then it's kind of been like, man, he's kind of a dick all the time. Why is that? Like,
Yeah.
so, but I mean, that'll all come to a head here in the next couple episodes. I mean, we have essentially spoiled a lot of what's going to be happening, but if you haven't figured out kind of what's going on from the show already, it's like we all know that Omni-Man did it. It's just more of the reasons for why he did it. And we've also spoiled that in the talking about this on the show.
Not this episode though.
Not this episode though.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really enjoy Invincible. I'll be really curious to see when a new season is going to get announced. If they've already announced it, I'll need to look into that. I hope that it gets another season. There's so much story to delve into. Like where I've gotten to in the comic, like there are so many cool villains that they could be playing around with in the future that yeah, there's just a lot of really cool things they could do with the show version. So
yeah, I'm sure they will. I don't really know much about like how the show's faring for them ratings wise, but I mean it's animation, so I think overall it's probably cheaper to produce, and maybe it's less of a time commitment for like the actors involved. So
right.
So hopefully, I hope they continue it. I do enjoy it. I have, like I said, I have a few gripes, but overall, I think it's good. I think it's good. I like it. I like that it's playing around with these concepts, and overall, superhero shows are pretty fun to watch for me. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I'm excited to watch more. I really hope that we get more. And but yeah, so far I think we'll have like kind of a more broad discussion of like the show and what it is after the finale. So
yeah. And then the last topic we're going to talk about today, which we mentioned at the beginning, maybe a little moment of levity here. We seem to like joke around this last like few minutes of it. We always have like some stupid topic, but
I think that's a nice way to cap off the episode.
So we're going to talk about apparently CW has a Powerpuff Girl show they're producing in that, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm okay with it. What do you think, Matt?
I am disgusted by the idea of this show becoming a reality. I am not looking forward to a live action Powerpuff Girls. And I don't even have that strong of a love for the original series. Like I think it was a fun show when it came out. I enjoyed it as a child. I definitely watched it and enjoyed it. And I think a lot of the like him as a villain from the original Powerpuff Girls was so funny.
I always found him creepy.
Yeah, well, and I think that's kind of partially the point. I mean, like, but like, however you felt about him as a villain, or like Mojo Jojo.
I am Mojo Jojo.
Yeah, I am Mojo Jojo. Right? Like, there's all these different funny characters.
Man, like, I just want to throw this out that they're like late 1990s, early 2000s Cartoon Network was so weird. Do you remember Cow and Chicken? And there's like a devil guy that walked on his butt.
Yep. Yes.
Like, and like the animation was just so like kind of creepy and like grungy.
Yeah, I feel like that was like Cartoon Network's grunge phase was going through. Some of the shows that came out during that time were very, very strange.
Like, do you remember I Am Weasel?
Yeah. I was like, I am Weasel. Like,
yeah.
Like, yeah, no, I think they definitely they didn't toe the line between like adult and child content. I think they 100% just stepped over that line. Where like, these are some cartoons for adults now, motherfucker. Like,
well, it's like I just feel like back when I was a kid, and I'm not gonna say shows are better. I don't even know if that's true, but they were just weirder. Like Cat Dog, what kind of weird idea? How did that even happen? Who thought of that show?
The fact that like someone in a board meeting was like, okay, hear me out. What if we did a show about a half dog, half cat?
Where how do they go poop?
Yeah, right. And like, oh, you mean like a creature that's half dog, half cat? And like, no. I mean, we're gonna staple a cat and a dog at the ass, and that's the whole creature. Like, so they have two personalities. Yes. And they're connected, like they don't have a butt. No. And at that point he drops his mic and it's just like
greenlit,
boom. Like, right. And everyone in the boardroom got up and clapped, like.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those shows were a product of like Ren and Stimpy's popularity. Like, because that show was freaking bizarro world. Like that was the most bizarre of any of them.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the children's programming after that was like really influenced by that. And I think the last of that era of like weird children's TV shows with bizarre humor was SpongeBob SquarePants. And for some reason it kind of like died off after that, and I kind of miss it. Now I feel like the zeitgeist now for children's programming is like frick, what is that show called? What am I drawing? Adventure Time.
Yes, I think that's a good example of like kind of the more modern, I don't know, like template.
Yeah, because now you have like Steven Universe and Gravity Falls, and like regular show. The only one of these I've really watched is Gravity Falls, which is an excellent program.
Sure.
But they all have kind of like that same sort of aesthetic quality about them.
Yeah, like they have kind of the same look. And I guess I wouldn't say themes, but just like the general feel of the show is very similar. And like, I don't know, like when I was told this news about this live action thing happening, my wife told me, and she did actually tell me she held off on telling me because she knew I'd be mad. And like, and I think this needs to stop. This needs to stop. Like this taking of older ideas, like of a cartoon especially, and bringing it to live action. I can't really think of an example that has ended up very well.
I mean, we talked about Riverdale. Though that's a comic. That was based off a comic.
You see, like that's a comic. Like that's definitely very different. Like we've seen the success of bringing comics to live action. Like the MCU has been the like backbone of our content on this podcast. But like one of the examples that comes to my mind is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. Like those movies are absolute dog shit. Like they're not great movies. And,
like, are you talking about like the 90s?
And I kind of feel the same way, maybe with the exception of the first film with the Transformers movies.
Are you talking about the 90s Ninja Turtles movies?
Yeah, no. Those movies are a work of art.
See, see, there you go, though. This might be a 90s Ninja Turtle.
See, but I think the big difference here is the use of CG.
But will they be using CG in this show?
I don't know. And it's the CW, so we can be assured that if it does use CG, it's going to be awful. So I don't know, like, because I guess to be fair, yeah, I really enjoyed the live action Ninja Turtle movies from the 90s, but that used a lot of practical effects. And like, love it or hate it, I thought those were fairly good. But like the Michael Bay treatment of some of these beloved franchises.
Well, see, I think since it's going to be on the CW, I think it's going to be more like the Green Arrow and shows like that.
Yeah. Which
rather
is
than
to
like a
say,
CGI fest. I think it's just gonna. I
mhm.
almost doubt there's even gonna be like major action scenes in this. I bet a lot of it's gonna be like high school drama.
Oh God. Well, and I'm looking at this image you have up right now of like, so this is an official image of them, like
Yeah,
what
this was the first image they released, which apparently was met with controversy for
boy,
some
I
reason. Oh,
can't
because they weren't
imagine
wearing
this
their
going.
costumes. People didn't like that, apparently.
Just so dumb.
Which this is the first the first article I looked at was this one where by BuzzFeed News, which is known for their
They're hard
integrity.
hitting, yeah. Like,
Apparently that first image was met with some skepticism by the Twitter crowd.
we all know
Which
that Twitter is a very even keeled, and
so it is starring Chloe Bennett is going to be playing Blossom, who is on Agents of Shield. She played Quake.
Yes.
And then this girl who's wearing, I think that's just a bra. I don't know what she's wearing. She'll be playing
Dove
Bubbles.
Cameron. Okay, Dove Cameron
Look
for
at
Bubbles.
those claws, and she has like a tattoo that says "she" on her ring finger.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, I mean, I'm not opposed if she kind of wants to wear this stuff. I don't know, like
Move on, cowboy.
And then we have crap, what was it? Buttercup.
Yeah, Yana Perlin. Okay.
I'm
not very familiar with any of these actresses because I have not been a Agents of Shield fan myself. But
yeah, well, I don't know what Buttercup's actress is from, but she has an interesting Instagram. So
wait, and what was that? I saw a familiar name near the bottom of that article. Where are you?
Donald Faison.
He's going to play Professor Utoni. Okay. I mean, that's really funny.
Which is weird because he seems like he's kind of the same age as these women are. Because I think Chloe Bennett I would guess she's in her 30s. I might be wrong. She might be in her late 20s, but Donald Faison, I guess, is in his 40s.
He's got to be in his 40s now. Yeah. Like, I mean, I really like him as an actor. Like, the casting on the show is just, I mean, the whole premise of the show just upsets me in the first place. So the casting is just not doing anything for me in terms of.
I get like a Pretty Little Liars feel off this show. I don't know why, or even like a Riverdale. I think it's going to be of that ilk.
I think you're probably right in that it'll be.
I have no great attachment to these characters beyond like a childhood nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not ultimately offended by this because I don't really think it's going to change my opinion on anything. I wouldn't be offended if they like wanted to remake Johnny Bravo, but they probably wouldn't because Pepe Le Pew is hated now. So maybe Johnny Bravo wouldn't be well received.
No, I don't think. Dude, they wrote Pepe Le Pew out of the newer Space Jam movie. Like, there's no freaking way Johnny Bravo would make a comeback. Like,
yeah, which is weird because people love that show. Like, I still kind of love it. Like, I haven't seen it in ages, but I have good memories of it.
Yeah, I think it's like it just was Johnny a product Bravo, of the time.
Yeah, but he, in a way, like he was like he acted with women a certain way, but the show really pointed out that he was pretty pathetic, because he lived with his mom and like.
Well, he lived with his,
and he was never successful, I don't think, in his amorous intentions.
No, he was a loser. He was 100% a loser who like pretended to be. Yeah, right. Like, and like, but yeah, what are they going to do? A live action of Johnny Bravo next? Like, I'm just. Some of these things they do, like, I don't know. I haven't been a huge fan.
Dexter's Laboratory would be kind of sweet as a live action show.
No, that just God, stop.
But you're right though. Like if they did that, it would probably be like some cheesy kid playing Dexter, and you'd be kind of like cringe.
Yeah, like I just don't. I would probably be more on board for, and I'm pretty sure they did this already, but they did like a revamp of the cartoon Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, which I think people didn't really like too much because I didn't watch it, but I heard it was bad.
And for whatever reason that was, I don't know. I don't think a live action version of this is going to fare much better.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with it personally. Like I said, I don't have much attachment to these characters. So if they can introduce these Powerpuff Girls to a new generation of tweens, I'm fine. Like, I mean, I can't imagine the characters are well known by like generation whatever. What is the generation again? What are we on? Z? Generation Z.
Mm-hmm.
So like if they want to give them a new reason for being, I'm fine with it. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm over, like, I want some more original shows. Like, because like some of the examples you gave, like with Gravity Falls and Adventure Time and the regular show, like those are all examples of like newer cartoons that I think are going to stand the test of time in terms of like people will look fondly back on those shows years from now. And I think like they'll be in that echelon of like Powerpuff Girls or Dexter's Laboratory or like whatever show you want to talk about that like we grew up with,
Yeah,
the
or
Teenage
the
Mutant Ninja
perennial
Turtles.
Spongebob, which for some reason has lasted generations.
Yeah.
Which no, I take that back. Not because some reason, because that show is brilliant.
It is. It's a very good show. I haven't watched any of the newer episodes of SpongeBob, to be fair, but I loved the original series.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, we don't need to get detracted. I know some people like really dislike the new episodes. I haven't watched many of them, but I always kind of think there's like some bias towards newer stuff sometimes too. But
yeah,
because usually I'll ask people like, "Oh, what do you think of the new episodes?" "Oh, they're crap." "Well, have you seen any of them?" "No."
No,
"Oh, okay."
right. Yeah, and I don't want to be too judgy on the stuff I haven't seen. So like, I don't know. For example, like this, like a series that was near and dear to my heart when I was younger, like more like a teenager, but was Teen Titans. Like the Teen Titans like cartoon that ran during like the 2000s was awesome. I love that show. I thought it had like a lot of depth. The animation style was really cool. It was pretty fun. Like I have recently gone back and watched through that whole series again over 2020, and I like everything I liked about it. I still like. But the newer version of that show, Teen Titans Go, that came out, like I do not like that series at all. Like I don't like the art style. I think it's a lot more childish than the original series was. But some of the original creators have come out, in defense of the show. That's just like two different shows for two different audiences, and so maybe I should be more open-minded in that regard.
Yeah,
so.
In general, I don't mind when studios reinvent things or like change things up like that. Like I love canon. Like I love exploring the intricacies of the universe of a created universe. I mean, it's I don't know, there's something about it I just love. Like I love like just getting lost on Wikipedia and like going through like all these different characters. Something about it just like really like pleasing to me. But at the same time, like I don't really mind when they reinvent things. Okay, I would mind if they screwed with Star Wars at this point because they already did it so soon, like not that long ago. But I don't know. I kind of like it, and as being a comic book fan too, you kind of have to know going into it that like the timeline is like they're constantly reinventing these characters. Like it doesn't. If you want to take canon, like you kind of have to be like take it with a huge grain of salt, or like be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's use like dreamscape logic, like from the Sandman. Like these characters aren't existing in like a logical universe. Like
right.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, but
right. I don't know, like whereas like the difference between Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go, like whatever this live action Powerpuff Girls thing is going to be, like this doesn't feel like a beautiful reimagining of the original series. by
Well,
people
I
who
think,
really love it.
but
This
but
feels
it's
like,
like, but it's like what you just said though. It's like the show isn't made for you.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Or
It's not made for us. It's made for a specific demographic.
yeah, and maybe it'll be better than I'm like being led
No,
well by.
it's probably gonna be god awful, and
Yeah,
that's okay. It's not made for me. Like I guess. I
yeah.
mean, sure, they could somehow make like a Citizen Kane version of Powerpuff Girls. I would probably tune in for that, but let's face it, like I don't even think it should be that. Like it should. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. I know that my initial reaction to this was not very positive, and if it is awesome, then Godspeed. But I know I probably won't be tuning in unless I hear some really amazing things, which I don't think I'm going to.
Like I said, it's not made for us. But that's not to let it off the hook either. Just it shouldn't be like complete garbage. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I know that it's a show that I think is going to have, because like, I don't know, you're like, oh yeah, Bubbles and Blossom. Do you remember when we were kids and we would beat the crap out of a green talking monkey with a giant brain? Or
Matt, what did you think when Fairly Odd Parents like did live action versions of those movies? Did you ever watch those? I think they had like Josh Drake in them or something.
No, I did not. Josh Drake, you mean Drake Bell?
Drake Bell.
Yeah, Drake and Josh are two very different people. No, I did not even know the existence. There were live action Fairly Odd Parents movies.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because I believe they're set in the same canonical version as the animated show. It's like for somehow the animated characters become like real life people or something. And
I'm having the same reaction to this as I did to the initial Powerpuff Girls announcement. This upsets me.
They did several of them, I believe. They did several of them. I don't know if they're extremely well received, but I just thought that is kind of interesting because not that canonicity really matters that much in Fairly Odd Parents, but I do believe they're set like within the show's world, which I'm pretty sure Powerpuff Girls, this show is not going to be set within that. Obviously, because Donald Faison looks nothing like the professor from.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the big obvious point, not the fact that they have to explain how are they going to incorporate some of these villains into the show? Are they going to do villains? Are they going to be like?
Well, I would imagine that probably, and I'm just bullshitting, but like for Mojo Jojo, I would just have to think that it's just going to be like an actual like actor guy. They're not going to have like a monkey as the villain.
Right. See, I don't know. I don't give a lot of credit to some of these shows and how they want to approach these villains.
I mean, like you said, him would be really interesting because him was almost like sexless, right? Like it wasn't a male. Like, well, I guess it was him, so he was a male, but he's like very
androgynous.
Yeah. So I wonder like how they'll play with that. I think that could be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I have my doubts as to how good any of these this particular program could be, but just shows of, because I don't know, like if we're talking about CW shows, like we look at Arrow, I think as a good example, perhaps.
Which I was really that show, so I can't really make a judgment on it.
Yeah, like I was a fan of Arrow initially, but I definitely fell off the bandwagon somewhere around season 3, and like I very distinctly remember that the community at large on Reddit, at least, was so upset with how the end of that show turned out that they like turned their subreddit into a Daredevil subreddit in protest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like it was a whole thing where they're like, yep, we're turning this into a Daredevil discussion subreddit now. So let's talk about the Netflix hit Daredevil.
Like canonicity, I thought it was really interesting on that CW Flash show. They actually brought in Ezra Miller is his name, the Flash from.
Oh yeah, the Flash from the films.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, like how they did a crossover there.
Yeah, man, if DC would do more cool stuff like that, man.
Well, originally, like the rumor was, and that they were bringing in Michael Keaton into the next Batman, or into the Justice League universe. Like they were literally bringing in Michael Keaton's version of Batman, so they were like going to do like a Flashpoint, like where he visits a bunch of universes or however that goes. But then Michael Keaton came out and was like, no, I don't think, like I can't remember his exact words, but he cast a lot of doubt on it.
Sure.
Which I don't know, like if it's just like in his contract, he can't really talk about it, but I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, him being able to reprise would be really amazing. Whether or not
well, it's like weirdly happens. Like Michael Keaton, like he played Batman, right? And then like he played Birdman in that film, which was like a comment on those like Batman movies in a lot of ways.
Like his experience, yeah.
And then he was the Vulture in Marvel, which obviously has some, like, another winged villain.
Right.
Or a character, I guess. Batman is not your typical, he's not a villain. And then then he comes back and goes full circle and plays Batman again. So it's just kind of a weird like career that he's had, I think.
Right. Well, and I like that he's able to do that. Like that we've had these moments that would allow for him to step back into that role, albeit even briefly. Like I think that would just be really cool. Like
yeah.
But anyway, I think we've rambled well beyond our original topic.
Yeah, I really wasn't gonna think that we would talk that long on Powerpuff Girls, but we kind of like just got off on them. Yeah, just shooting off every direction. So
my official take is Powerpuff Girls thing is going to be garbage, but maybe that doesn't matter. I'm just a cranky old man.
Yeah.
But
my initial take is I want to be angry about this. Like I'm angry about Carly Morgenthau or even like that Space Jam trailer for some reason. But I don't have enough passion. I don't like. I hope it works out. I hope Powerpuff Girls get introduced into a different demographic or generation, and then they can be relevant again. So sure. That's what I hope for.
We can only hope.
This show is going to change the world.
It's going to change this summer.
But it might also have to do some bad things to get the greater good.
Oh God, don't even.
They should make a show just of Carly Morgenthau like characters.
Okay, now you're jumping off the deep end now.
Yeah,
I think that is as good a place as any to end today's episode. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast. And we look forward to speaking to you all again next week for the finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yes?
Correct, yeah.
And we'll have another episode of Invincible to talk about as well. And then, Lord knows, maybe we'll be talking about the Johnny Bravo live action adaptation that'll be coming.
Did that movie get so many millennials' attention? Anyway.
I mean, it would get a lot of millennials' attention and a lot of millennials' ire. But anyway, thanks for joining us today. And we hope you all have a great week.
Bye, everybody. Thanks again for listening.
Bye.
Bye.